Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, the 13th of January, but I consider that a lucky day, so we're all in good luck today. For those of you who are new and for those of you who are joining us again, my name is Jeff Goldberg, and I am the founder of the Sales Pro Network. I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network as a place where salespeople can come, nurture themselves, network with other people, learn. And as most of you know, every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, I either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. If you are watching us live today, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook and you haven't connected your account to StreamYard, it's just going to say Facebook user, so please put your name in. And of course, if you have any questions for our guest today, please put them in the comments and I'll be sure to ask her. And finally, if you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to, once again, I've come up with a winner, my friends, our great guest today. Please say hello to my new friend, Kay Miller. Hi, Kay.
Hi there, Jeff. It's great to be here.
I'm very excited to be speaking with you today because you are a Muffler mama and the author of Uncopyable Sales Secrets. And I think we all want to know, look at that, twinsies. I think we all want to know how to be uncopyable. But before we get to that, could you just tell us a little bit about your background? Give us a 2 or 3 minute version of what brought you up to this point.
What brought me here? Well, as a kid, I discovered the magic of sales because it was a great way to make money. And like you see these kids with lemonade stands, I always stop. I bet you do too. Salespeople stop. And I sold everything from candy to candles and crafts, and I spelled everything with K's. I love alliteration. So, I just was listening to your interview with Chip. Oh, I don't remember his last name.
Chip Helm.
Chip Helm. And, he was saying everybody's in sales. We are all in sales, and there's so many different, ways that happens. But that was my early sales experience. I went to college and I got a business degree because that's what my dad told me I should do. And I specialized in marketing because that was the least boring. I'm like, accounting? No, not for me. Anyway, I got out and realized I was qualified not for marketing, but for sales, because marketing, you really need an MBA. And so that was, don't want to give our ages away, but I think they're similar. The job market in 1982 was not good. You remember those days, right? So
sure do.
Yeah. And I was fascinated to see that back in the day, you actually sold Encyclopedia Britannica. I want to hear a little bit about that if we have time.
Sure.
So I had my eye on working for Procter and Gamble or Campbell's Soup or something like that, but didn't get those jobs, but got passed over in the interview process. So after I graduated, I used my connections, again, another thing you've talked about a lot, networking and connections, and ended up with a company called Amerock. And they're still around, cabinet hardware for builders, mainly knobs and pulls, but also all the internal drawer slides and everything. Well, I was the first woman they ever hired, and we'll probably talk a little more about that, but that was quite an experience. I was really a trailblazer. It was a really interesting and overall very positive experience. Because I was successful with them, I was hired away by an even more glamorous company. I sold automotive mufflers and catalytic converters. And that's where I got the name Muffler Mama, which again, we'll talk about, and ended up being their salesperson of the year. So even though I was early on and didn't know, in my brain, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, I instinctively knew, the things, about being honest and truthful and making it about the customer and getting them to trust you and really having their best interest at heart, while at the same time being really strategic and figuring out what companies will make give me the biggest return on my investment for sales. So I did. I became the number one salesperson. Later on, I went to work with my husband, Steve Miller. I know you're a music fan. He's not the Steve Miller Band, but he's pretty cool. And we worked for years consulting for marketing and sales for our clients. I more focused on the sales. And so last year I wrote a book applying the uncopyable concept to sales. And so that is a book that we just showed you. You should buy and get and follow, and you will make more sales. So how's that?
I like that. Before we move on, happy Friday, Jeff, says Ben Gips, one of my favorite salespeople, just a terrific guy.
Hey there.
Um, what was it like being the first woman salesperson in a company?
Well, it was very interesting. You know, it was the management was afraid, I think, and what happened is really I did have to prove myself both to them because they kept drilling me. Are you going to be able to call on accounts that in the builders industry and lumber and all these hard goods? They were very they had to vet me and make sure that I could do this. And of course I said, oh, I can do all that. I can do all that. Don't worry. You're going to be glad you hired me. And then, we all know there's an internal dialogue, right? Once I was out in the field, eventually the guys, once I proved myself to the my customers and my peers, I think they really enjoyed having a female to work with and call on them. So I think it worked out really well. I did in the beginning get very intimidated, and that my first sales call was a disaster, right?
I've heard, and I want to hear about that.
So I had been through the training. I had met all my accounts with my district manager. And then it was time for me to go out on my own. And I studied, my account list and the prospects back then where I'm looking through the yellow pages, right? And found this lumber store. And also I had talked to my distributors and they had given me a list of the accounts they most wanted. And one of these was called Blackstock Lumber. So I, studied the lay of the land, drove by to see where the parking lot was and the office and all these different things ahead of time. And the morning that I was going to call on them, I pulled into the parking lot and oh my gosh, it was like an ant farm. There were men, and they were all men, running around the lumberyard in hard hats and flannel shirts. And they had just gotten a huge load of lumber. So it was really busy, and it was busier than I had ever seen it when I drove by to check it out. And when I pulled in, mind you, I'm like 24 years old, which, as at my age, it seems like I was a baby. And pulled in, and my face turned bright red because everyone turned and looked at me. I had a shiny silver Buick Skylark, fresh from the car wash, and there are all these dirty work trucks and all these guys. So, it felt like they all turned and stared at me. They probably just glanced my way. But when I pulled in, I was just shaking. My heart was beating so fast. And I gave myself a pep talk. I'm like, okay, this is what you said you could do. You just need to get out of the car, walk across the parking lot, go in the door. And I did not do that. It was like an out-of-body experience. I shifted into reverse and I backed out even redder and left my first prospecting call.
Wow. So what did you learn from that?
So I think as salespeople, if we're honest, we've all had something, an experience where we have failed in some way. When I drove away, I was so angry at myself. I thought nothing could be worse than this feeling. So the next day I was determined to go back, and I did. The next morning, that first thing I did, and this was a cold call, but my goal was just to meet the owner and get an appointment. So I really wasn't going to try to sell him. So, when I say cold call, yes, it was a cold contact. But at that point, I didn't care if I fell flat on my face in the middle of the parking lot. I was going in, and I did. And of course, the next day, the lumberyard was not that crowded anyway, but I got out of the car, went in, and asked for the manager and basically just said, I'm the new rep. I'd like to, set a time so I can learn more about your business. And he was amenable. And so I did go back and sell him a small display of our product. And through the years, his selection grew and grew, and he became a really good customer. So it was a win, and it was a great lesson. And I think we all, we learn more by our failures than our successes, really, don't we? I mean, I'm sure again, selling Encyclopedia Britannica. I know you were a sales manager, but you said you also did some sales. So I mean, I'd love to hear a story that you have about that experience as well.
Oh, I've got a gazillion of them. All the managers at Encyclopedia Britannica were selling managers. So first I was a salesperson and then became a manager. But even when you're managing other teams, you're still people, you're still selling. So, it's interesting. When I tell people I sold Encyclopedia Britannica, they usually say, wow, you must be the best salesperson in the world. And the truth is, you didn't have to be a great salesperson to sell people what they wanted for their children. Because people who have children, what do they care about most in life? Their kids. I've
Their
got
kids.
3. I care way more about them than I care about me, and I care a lot about me. So I think the reason why I found it so easy to sell Encyclopedia Britannica, there were 2. One was that I was a true believer. I really believed that they were the finest set of books that you could possibly buy, even though you could get them in the library for free. When your kid goes to do a report, 30 other kids of the class are doing the same report. So, there's only one M volume. So I really felt that if people would invest in these books for their kids, they really were going to do better in school and become whatever they wanted to be. And the other thing that made me good at it was I listened to everything they said in training. This was very, very early on in my career. I didn't have a lot of experience in sales, but they had an amazing training program. It was actually just VHS tapes, one after the other. For an entire 2-week period, I sat in a room. My manager would come in, put in a tape. An hour later, he'd come back in. What'd you think? Put in the next tape. Didn't even discuss what was on the tapes. What did you think? Put in the next tape for 2 full weeks. But it was exactly best practices for selling Encyclopedia Britannica. And I was either too stupid or smart enough to realize I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm just going to do what they told me to do. And that's exactly what I did. I did exactly what they said the best practices were. And I mean, to a T. They had like a little notebook that flipped out, so it could stand up. I forgot.
Yes.
They were called stand-up notebooks. And maybe, I don't know, 70 pages with pictures and words on them. And the whole thing, I kid you not, was the instructions were you look at the book, you point with your finger, and no, you can't see, and you read and you point to the words. You don't look at the prospect. You just read the book. And I said, well, if you just read the book, you just read the book. And that's really all I did. And I believe there were 2,500 salespeople when I started. I was in the top 10 in the first 30 days. And by the end of 3 months, I was in the top 3. And my boss came to me and said, look, we're going to make you a manager. I'm like, I don't know how to manage salespeople. He goes, you're going to be a manager. And the same training, that type of training they had for selling Britannica, they had for management. So that really launched my career in sales. It was my first really large professional organization that I worked with. And again, I just did what they told me to do. Fortunately for me, I got recruited away about 2 years before the end. Britannica did not see the computer age coming. We used to get asked all the time, do you have this on CD-ROM? That's how long ago this was. And the answer we were taught to give was, would you want your kids reading Shakespeare on a computer screen? And some people would go, no, I guess not. But some people would go, no, I want a computer. So they didn't see it coming. Luckily, I got recruited away to be a co-national sales director at a company called Frost & Sullivan. But 2 years later, 2,500 salespeople plus, I think, 250 managers out of a job in one day. And I was like, thank the Lord. But it was a great experience. And I sold it at state fairs. I had a permanent exhibit at LaGuardia Airport, and I would knock on people's doors by appointment. It was really a great experience.
Well, and I have to say, I was lucky enough to grow up with a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas. Now, were they current? That was the thing that, there were, which is good for you as a salesperson. But I have to say, as a kid, it was really fun. You go to look something up, and then you're looking over at the other page and something else really interesting is there. And, and it was kind of like you go on Instagram or something and you go down the rabbit hole. But this one was, you came away with a positive feeling and you learned something. And, sometimes I just pull out the M and let's see what's in the M's, so It was a great product. And of course it's, who knows, it could come back, it really could. I mean, with all this stuff,
I don't think so.
I don't know. There's something about those.
It's like the Yellow Pages, Kay. I don't think the Yellow Pages are coming back anytime soon.
Sailed. Okay.
Actually, good morning, Tony Scalise. He said Yellow Pages. What's that?
Yeah, what's
So,
Yellow Pages? I know,
yeah.
really.
A lot has changed since you were selling mufflers and since I was selling Britannica. You just posted recently about artificial intelligence, AI. Um, Things seem to be changing in the world, and certainly the world of sales, faster and faster. What's changing, and what do you think has stayed the same from when you and I started selling?
Well, one thing that has stayed the same is I really, and it's even more so now, people do want a connection. And they want to be heard and understood. Now, what has changed is technology, of course, and I'm of the opinion that we've got to embrace AI. It's there, and so if you can't beat them, join them for sure. And I with some of my consulting clients, we've used AI to develop messages, mostly marketing to pull people in so that we can get the privilege to interact and sell them. And AI has been really incredible for coming up with those messages. It's challenged me personally, and I think it will challenge everyone to find out what we can do that AI can't, which is a lot. When you connect with a customer, you want to learn about them, and it's interesting. You talk about the Britannica. I'm not sure if that would work today or not, because the way people buy now is we want to be understood and heard, and we want to know that the salesperson is helping us. And that's what when I talk about the uncopyable sales philosophy, it really is a win-win. It's the customer being glad that they purchased, that they bought. And I bought a new car recently, and I didn't tell anyone that someone sold me a car. I said, I bought a car, and here's why I bought it. And, here are the things that helped me make my decision. People still do buy on emotion, justify with logic. The encyclopedia has to be the best example of that. You want your kids to be successful and have every advantage. So, like you said, selling for a product for somebody's kids was probably really simple. I don't know if that's simple, but so I really do feel like back in the day when I started out in sales, it was all low tech. It was all face to face or phone, and that has obviously changed.
Sure.
And we have great tools in our toolbox, but I think what stayed the same, and even is more so, is that connection with other people. And we, as salespeople, really need to tune into that.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who aren't familiar yet, you might want to take a look at Chat GBT. You can actually type anything into this, like write me 2 paragraphs like Dr. Seuss, and it'll do it. It's true. It's both terrifying and amazing. And look, it's Skynet. It's Terminator type stuff. This could take over the world. But I think that salespeople and everybody else need to embrace this because it's not going away anytime soon. So, what does it mean to be uncopyable?
Being uncopyable starts with you, the salesperson. And again, in one of your past podcast interviews, we talked about, sometimes you might be selling a product that isn't the lowest price. If something was the cheapest, salespeople wouldn't have a job. If it was the best of the cheapest, it's going to sell itself. We are tasked with, finding the customers who will value what we are selling. So one of the first things I talk about, and you can only see part of it, I hope it doesn't make people crazy if I turn that. There's the moose in my background, and the moose is a symbol for your target market, your true target market, your best customer. And the win-win in that is that you're finding the customer who will most value what you have, and that's going to be the easiest to sell to, that they're going to want to buy. So you really, when you spend time on your finding your target market, your moose, then you as the salesperson really are developing a relationship with that prospect. But you're creating a scenario where you're helping them buy. It's a win-win, and you want them to buy. But I know, and I'm sure you do too, people who have left companies and taken their clients with them. It's not always about the very best product or the cheapest price. Of course, it's about what you deliver as a salesperson. They have somebody on their team who will take care of them, make sure that they, if something goes wrong, they can get a hold of you. What connections do you have that you can help them with? So being an uncopyable salesperson is really uncopyable sales is really about the salesperson and what you represent to the customer.
Yeah, as I was reading the book, I just kept going, yep, yep, I agree,
Hmm.
right? And we agree certainly that in almost all circumstances, people aren't buying companies; they're buying you, the person, and it's the relationship that you can build with them and the trust that you build with them. I used to work for a very famous sales trainer before I opened up my own company, and his name opened doors for me. But when I met with people, VPs of sales or presidents or CEOs, to discuss training their teams, it wasn't that guy they were buying. It was Jeff and his ability to deliver that guy's training in a way that their people were going to get that they were buying. So, I guess if you could say Nike, they're buying the company, but even then you could say they're buying Michael Jordan, his endorsement of Air Jordan. So, it's how do we develop our own personal brand? You're big on having a personal brand. How do we do that?
One of the ways that we brand ourselves, my husband and I both, the company is called The Adventure, is our color. And all our products are orange. We always wear orange when we speak or we are with clients, and we have orange giveaways. A huge. So that is something that makes us unique. And I've told a lot of people, small entrepreneurs, small business owners, and salespeople, that is one thing that you can do so that you are memorable. So is that copyable? Yes, but if you really go big with a color, you can be memorable. And when we've got to be unique. Look at what everyone else is doing and don't do it. But beyond just what makes you, memorable, your brand really has to do with what you promise to the customer. What are you going to deliver? And I know you've talked about this a lot, the basics, which, like common sense isn't that common. I mean, doing the basics is really one easy way, an uncopyable secret to get ahead. And I'm shocked still at the times I call people back and they say, "Hey, thanks for calling me back." Or thanks, sometimes thanks for calling me back so quickly. Sometimes just thanks for calling me back. That is just a no-brainer, just really basic trust building. Do what you say when you say you're gonna do it. That's one of the things you talk about. Beyond that, what is your story and as it relates to the customer? One of the things that I talk about in the book, how the way that I got this nickname Muffler Mama, when I started working in the automotive industry, I didn't know anything about cars. So I went to one of the muffler shops who bought through my biggest distributor, and I asked the manager once I got to know him, "Will you show me how to install a muffler?" And he was taken aback, not only because I'm female, but no one had ever asked that. No rep had ever wanted to understand his business to that level. And so it was kind of a funny story because he said, "Well, you have to go to Red Wing shoe store and buy some steel toe boots." And, being somewhat fashion conscious still, I looked at his boots, the boots he was wearing. I'm like, those are fugly, as we say now. And I wasn't too keen on that, but I did. He said, "Unless you want to lose your toe." No, I don't. So I did go to buy the steel toe boots. We set an appointment. And the day I came back, he handed me all this heavy gear and he showed me how to tear the old muffler system out of the car and how to put the new one in. And that story really put me on the map. People, my manager was impressed, my fellow salespeople were impressed, and word got around. And of course, I helped because that was a signature story that no one else could copy. I mean, I went and did that too. No, I did it first. That was my thing. And for the people that I consult with, I always encourage them to find out, to think of a way that they can have their own unique story as it relates to a customer. So that is really one of the ways that I became uncopyable. I'm still called Muffler Mama all these years later. and nobody's actually been fighting me for that nickname.
And didn't you actually put on the helmet and do some welding?
I did put on the helmet and I did do some welding. And if you remember, the movie Flashdance had just come out around that time. And that was just a great feel-good movie. Jennifer Beals starred in it.
Yep.
And she's an aspiring dancer, but she has to pay the bills by day. So she is working in a factory on an assembly line. And when the movie opens, she's actually holding a welding torch and welding something. Now, when the camera pans in, you don't know if it's a woman or a man. I think we all assume it's a man, right?
We certainly did, but we found out it wasn't.
We found out it wasn't. So when they pan in and then suddenly the welding torch is put down and this person starts to remove the helmet. Oh, it's a woman. Oh, it's Jennifer Beals looking super sexy and great.
Yes,
Especially for just welding, little perspiration, make it perfect. So yes,
curly hair.
Yes, her hair. Oh my gosh.
She's perfect after taking off the helmet, of course. But I can't eat lobster today without remembering that movie. I don't know if you remember, but she's kind of seducing the boss at one point.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Do you like lobster? Can't eat lobster today without remembering Jennifer Beals in that movie.
That is hilarious. Yes, that's a memorable scene too.
It's great stuff.
So yes, it is funny because I just went skiing on Wednesday and you wear the skin and then the helmet, and I took my hat off and like, okay, this is not good. But Jennifer Beals, she can pull it off. So as I'm welding,
Hollywood magic.
Yeah, so of course. Yeah, there was no cut. I needed a cut. When I was under the car welding this muffler and the manager's showing me what to do, and I'm thinking, man, this is heavier than I thought. It's hot, but I'm getting it because you put everything together with clamps and gaskets and things, and then you weld it all in place. And when I was welding, I thought, I'm kind of like Jennifer Beals here, and so I just kind of got a kick out of that. And of course, in my brain, I'm like, what a feeling. So getting into it. And then when I was done welding and I put my equipment down and I'm thinking, okay, here's my Jennifer Beals moment, right? And so I reach up and I start to take the helmet off. And as I'm taking it off, I look across the garage and there's one of these utility sinks with a mirror over it. And I caught sight of my reflection. Didn't look like Jennifer Beals. Face is red, mascara's running down. The guys are kind of giggling at me. So it was a fun story. But again, it was funny, but it really, it put me on the map. I really think, and I went on to become the #1 salesperson for Walker Exhaust, which at the time was the largest muffler manufacturer in the world. So for that company, I was one of just, a few women. It was mostly men. And again, boy, once they got to know me, and I called them back when I said I would. I helped them if they had inventory problems. I, would call the competitor and get a fill in or whatever I had to do to take care of the customer. I did that. And at the same time, I was strategic about thinking about, okay, who is bringing me the most sales? Where can I go find more of those? They are my moose.
Makes sense. Good morning, Tony Scalise, and good morning, Ray Aurora. You suggest that we need to make ourselves invaluable and irreplaceable. What are your thoughts on how we can do that, especially if we're selling a commodity?
Well, I mean, a commodity, to be invaluable and irreplaceable, really be an asset and part of your customer's team. And I still have a letter that somebody wrote to me all those years ago at Walker. And of course, in between then, I've been, working with my husband still in sales. But one of my customers wrote a letter to my boss saying, Kay has become an asset to our company. We don't know what we could do without her. So a commodity, there are still issues with inventory and delivery and supply chains and, whatever you're selling, there are issues that you can help your customer with. And again, they don't have to worry about things, if you can take that off their shoulders so they can do the real job, or the rest of their job, then you really are solid. That is, something that they become to rely on.
So you might not be able to differentiate your product, but you can differentiate yourself by being invaluable to the client, by helping them in ways other than, okay, I've got the same widget that you've got, or in my friend Ben Gipp's case, I've got the same packaging and bubble wrap that other people have. How do I separate myself? Be more of a consultative seller and be helpful to the client. Maybe not in regards to your product or service, but how can you actually help them do what they want to do, which is make more money, close more business, and things like that.
Right. And, just always start from how I want to help you. In the book, I have a little story about someone who brought IT services, and he says, we bought Leslie, we wanted, because she said, I'll give you white glove service. And I love that she named what she's doing for the client, because again, if you can have something that people can, just wrap their head around and think of you, it's really powerful. So yes, many times there is even if there is a little bit of a differentiation, it's probably not a deal breaker if you can deliver to the customer what they really want.
Yep, got it. We all want to reach buyers before our competition does. What are some of your ways to capture the attention of a prospect, and what are some secrets for getting in the door?
Interesting how things have changed since the old days, like that we're talking about, that there used to be, you could cold call, you'd go in, there would be gatekeepers, you might have to leave a message, but now email and voicemail, that is what salespeople run into so much of the time. My recommendation is to really focus on who is your best target, your moose, and then do something different. And that is usually, not always, but a lot of time, it's offline. Direct mail is just so powerful now for reaching a prospect. And one of the things I've done for years is make a greeting card for the customer and use their picture or their company or something about them to put on the front. And that has opened more doors. And so, when we talk about next step selling, when you're sending something out, or doing any type of outreach, you think about what's the next step. So when you send if, say, for example, a greeting card with their picture, make the next step about them. It could be, if you want to have an appointment, you still say, I've looked at your market and I think I found a way that you can get more business. Or send something. We have done and still do mailings because everything is going so online now. You can send something like we call lumpy mail, so you have an envelope with something in it. Or we send, if it's a big prospect we really want, we call it our shock and awe package, where we send an orange box and it's full of orange things, an umbrella and a pair of these glasses and books and different things like that. So I really think that direct mail in this case is really powerful. So those, that's one of the ways.
Because so many people aren't using it anymore. They've given up on it. Email is cheap and easy, except you know what? I don't know about UK. I get between 250 and 400 emails every single day. Cannot possibly read them all. So if I recognize your name, I'll open your email. If not, you better have an incredible subject line. Otherwise, it's deleted before I read it. I don't have the time. And I love what you said about sending something with a picture on it. I was talking to somebody about using send out cards, and she went on Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
I got a card that had this on the cover. That's my
that's
dog.
Your dog.
I post pictures of my dog on Facebook all the time, and she was brilliant enough to copy the picture, send it to me. Do you think I wasn't going to read what was inside this? I mean, it was like that. She had me immediately. So I think that's brilliant. And at one point, I was working with a company. They do server maintenance for mainframe computers. Okay. Really huge computers. They had clients like the New York Stock Exchange and Mount Sinai Hospital here in New York. And they sold to CTOs, the chief technology officer in these large companies. And I believe there are three people who are the most difficult to get in front of: doctors, lawyers, and CTOs. And of the three, CTOs are far harder than the other two, and the other two are hard enough. I actually helped them hire an internal telemarketing team. I trained the team. I managed the team. We could not get appointments to save our lives. And so you know what a radio controlled car is, the little toys.
Oh yeah.
So I found a Lamborghini. It was $25. This was probably about 15 years ago, so they're probably more expensive now, but they were $25 each, looked really cool. And we packaged them beautifully. And the note inside said, here's the car. If you'll meet with me, I'll bring the controller and leave it with you. 3 out of 10 CTOs who received it agreed to an appointment for a $25 toy, but it was different, like you said, and it caught their attention and it was cool. I mean, it was a total cost of $100 per appointment. I'll pay that all day long. So I like what you're saying. Be different, be distinctive, catch their eye.
I was going to say, yeah, what was the ROI on that? I mean, that is incredible. And I think people lose sight of that. It's the old spray and pray, and, like you said, we are all overwhelmed. Of course, I get that many emails. We all do. And yes, now we can use AI to get the best email headline, that we could possibly get. But, it's like you said, look at what everybody else is doing and don't do it. And everybody else is using email, calling, and guess what else? LinkedIn. So how many times have you gotten LinkedIn pitches lately?
10 a day.
I just can't believe that. I mean, how many people, I'm sorry, but get with the program, people. I hate that.
Not just LinkedIn pitches, not just LinkedIn pitches, but immediate. You accept a connection request and boom, I want to talk to you about how to save you money or get more appointments or something like that. It's crazy. Here's another one I think you'll like, and I've taught this a million times, and it is corny as heck, except it works. So you go to a shoe store and buy the cheapest pair of sneakers you can possibly find. You take one shoe out, and then again, you box it nicely. And the note inside says, now that I've got one foot in the door, what's it going to take to get the other? And yes, it's so corny, except you get something like that. You go, all right, I think I got to give this guy or this lady a shot. Does it work every time? No. But if you're just sending the same email saying, we're the greatest company in the world, and here's why you should meet with us. Yes, exactly. You're like everybody else. And, nobody has the time. So you've got to stand out. What do you mean by think like Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Sherlock, but I just wanted to address one more thing about your creative ways of getting in the door, which is great. I'm doing a program on that next week. I'm going to use those examples because they're great. The other thing about getting in the door like that is that this is your first impression with this customer who we say we are going to serve, we're going to help, we're going to be your advocate, your ally. You don't want. It's not congruent to start a relationship like that with an email or a LinkedIn pitch that is just, that you put no effort into. So it not only gets you in the door, it just really makes that conversation. It totally changes the conversation because they're like, wow, this guy was creative enough and took the time and energy to send a shoe. I mean, like you say, it might not be, it might be corny, but you still were creative, and that's different. And, there's a company we've worked with in the past called 3D Mail, and they have a million things that you can use, from bank bags, and some of them are corny, to pill bottles that you can mail and all kinds of things. So there are a lot of options. And here's the beauty of it. Hardly anyone is doing that. So
here's another one that you can use in your webinar. This isn't my story, but I was doing some training for Verizon Wireless with another trainer. It was really her deal, and for some reason they wanted a man in the room with her too, so I had to be there too. And she told this story. She used to work for A&M Records back when records were actually records, and she was in the sales department. She had nothing to do with artists, developing artists, but somebody at one point delivered a pizza to her. The guy walks in delivering a pizza to her at lunch, and she goes, I didn't order a pizza. He goes, it's already paid for. It's to deliver it to you. And when she opened the pizza box, the guy's demo tape, it was a cassette tape, was taped to the inside of the pizza box with his contact information. Brilliant. I mean, brilliant. You got to do something to catch people.
I know, that is brilliant. And, it's still, if you don't want to listen to it or watch it, you don't have to. But I bet he did. I bet most people
She
who get that
absolutely,
would.
she absolutely listened to it. Again, she had nothing to do with artist development, but the guy got her attention, and his name was Michael Jackson. And all. No, I'm just kidding about that part. So tell me about thinking like Sherlock Holmes.
Thinking like Sherlock Holmes goes beyond asking questions and listening. And first of all, I have to say that one of the biggest mistakes that salespeople make is we talk too much. And notice I say we, because, I can tell Jeff and I had a call, pre-show call. And boy, the conversation flowed. We really clicked. We're also talkers. We are excited about life and what our dogs and our kids and all this stuff. So, number one, listening is so key, and listening not to think about what you're going to say next, but listening to find out what they're talking about, asking more questions. Sherlock goes into looking for clues, which one of is body language. And of course, face to face is the very best way to get a lot of these clues, but we're having a tough time with face to face now. And thanks to the pandemic, who knows if or when it will ever be the same as it was. But looking for clues is so important. And that's one of the reasons I really prefer video meetings, even though we started this one at 10 minutes to 7 in the morning. But, video gives you the opportunity to get those clues. So one thing I recommend for salespeople, by the way, this is not Sherlock, but get good at video. Make yourself do it if you don't like it, because it is really powerful. It can help you stand out compared to your competition. But Sherlock is, what else can you find out? What can I find out? I can see that Jeff is a reader. I've seen pictures of his family. He held up a card and said, man, someone captured a picture of my dog, which obviously is a very important part of your life. In fact, he talked about the dog before. So I'm looking for clues about Jeff, and I know that he's into comedy. He's actually a part-time stand-up comedian. I've tried to learn a lot about Jeff just because I want to click with him and connect with him. So be a Sherlock. It's not just these are the questions I want answers to, and listening to the answers. It's clues. I do like to think of the time that I went to a palm reader years ago at a fair, at a solstice parade. I had never been to a palm reader or a tarot card or anything, but I thought, oh, this would be kind of fun, right? It was such an education to watch this woman as she's preparing her table and getting ready. She is totally looking at me. And as she's looking at my palm, I mean, she was looking at my palm too, but she was studying me. And as she'd start to say something, like I remember she said, I see a sister, I mean, a brother, because I have a brother, not a sister. And she could just tell by the way I reacted what the answer was. So that's, if you can get, your radar really up, your antenna, be a detective. Think, oh, I'm going to find out as much as I can about this person. Then that is going to be huge in helping you make the sale. Because face it, we all want to be heard and listened to. It's not just about learning from the customer. That's huge, of course, but it is very, honoring to just really be tuned into somebody when they are talking and really listen to what they're saying, be interested, be curious. I don't know if you watched Ted Lasso, but there was a great episode about somebody who wasn't curious. Do you remember that episode?
Isn't that where he's shooting the darts, right?
The darts, right.
Yeah, brilliant.
So it's brilliant. And the whole, it's yes, I think you can kind of tell, like I can read Jeff that, he is somebody who's curious and wants to meet people and learn about them. Give off that vibe. Let your vibe show. Let it grow. Yep. So I think the Sherlock is going beyond just listening and really searching for the clues that can help you serve the customer. Of course, we want to make a sale. So we talk about, we got to help them get what they want. Yeah, but I want to make sales. Well, that's the only way you're really going to make the sales. And, was it Zig Ziglar that said, if you help enough other people get what they want, you will get what you want. So you have to start from that perspective. Okay, how can I help them? And being Sherlock is going to help you learn about them.
Love that idea. Yes, when you give the gift of listening to someone, they feel special, and that's exactly what I want my prospects to feel. I want them to feel special, and you clearly listen to me. Yes, I am a part-time stand-up comedian, and I don't think we discussed this because I don't think when we first spoke that I had made the decision, but I've made the decision, and it's my goal that by the end of this year, I'm actually going to be out of the speaking and training business. I'm going to be doing stand-up comedy full time, but it's going to be for sales. I'm writing a set right now all about selling, and I plan to market it to large organizations for annual and quarterly sales meetings. I'm going to be a sales comedian, and that's going to replace everything else I do by the end of this year. So,
Wow. Well, thanks for announcing that. That is awesome. And I mean, I think that's great. And sales humor. It's okay. So I have some humor in my background too. I was I did freelance humor writing when my daughter was growing up, mostly parenting humor. And at that time, email was new, but I'd shoot it off to all these publications, and the ones that wanted it would send me a tear sheet and $30. So I love humor, and I have actually, uh, I try to add humor to my sales communications also, but I think that's brilliant that you are going to come up with humor around sales because, when things are tough, you've got to laugh, right? I mean, when my dad passed away a year ago, I swear we had so many laughs because when everything else is gone, you just got to laugh, right? And salespeople, we face a lot of tough times. It's discouraging and bad things happen, and of course, humor is normally when things go a little wrong, right? So I think that's really exciting. I think I'm going to enjoy watching that journey for you.
yeah, I'm going to combine the thing I know the best with the thing I love the best. I know sales the best and sales management. I love stand up, and it's going to be sales is serious business. That's the name of my talk. And I've got about 12 or 15 minutes written. I need 30, but we're getting there. When you sit down and write that stuff, I've got so many funny stories of things that happened to me while doing sales for Britannic and many other companies. The time that I needed to get a deposit out of somebody in his house, and I wouldn't leave without it. And he went into the other room, and I thought he was going to come back with the deposit, but he came back with a gun and stuck it in my face while I'm training somebody. We got in the car, and the trainee said, "I think you can drop me off now." There's way more, and it's way funnier when you hear it.
I can't wait to hear the full version. But as somebody who has written humor, I say humor, but not comedy. Comedy's too intimidating for me. But I have a friend, and he says it wasn't funny at the time. And that's kind of something I think about. Even now, when things go wrong, I always think this is going to be so funny at some point. So just a little shout out to everybody listening. Just think about where are your best stories? They're when things went wrong. Yeah. And so just remember that in the trenches when things go wrong.
Sure. How often do we say, we'll laugh about this someday? Yeah. What do you mean by determination makes the difference?
I love the concept of grit, that Angela Duckworth, her book and her TED Talk. If you haven't read the book, the TED Talk is great. There's just really something inside of us that we need that seed of greatness in ourselves that we want to make a difference. And Simon Sinek says, what's your why? So, some people don't have the drive and the determination and the grit to accomplish things. You just have to find that within yourself, the determination that you will succeed. I've gone to a couple of concerts recently, which I hadn't gone for a long time, but one was Elton John, which is amazing. One was Brandy Carlisle, equally amazing on New Year's Eve. These artists worked so hard. I mean, I'm like, phoning it in is the very opposite of what they did. They do this because they love what they do, but they're doing it to serve the audience. I felt like both of those artists and their bands were singing to me, right? So I feel like that determination. I tell a story in the book about my daughter who was a college golfer, had a scholarship to play college golf, golfed all through her years. And there was one particular story that I talk about, which there were others, where she got into a sand trap right next to, and it was a par 3 short hole. Are you a golfer, Jeff?
I'm not. Well, I golf a lot, but there's always a clown whose mouth opens and a windmill that goes around. Other than
Yeah,
that, no.
right. Okay, I get it. Well, she landed in the sand trap, and some evil golf designer had put railroad ties, a wall of railroad ties. You've seen, they make these sand traps to be hazards, right? And it took her 7 tries to get out of that sand trap. She should have gone backwards, taken the easy route. My hair is getting grayer by the second as I'm watching this, but she didn't. And, it turned out she finally got in the hole. She played the rest of the golf, and that was one of the first few holes. She played the rest of the match even par. And she was just so determined. You just have to, as the preachers used to say, dig down deep and find in yourself, what is your why. You want to serve your customers, but you also want to make a good living. You want to support your family. You have causes that you want to support. You have passions like comedy, which for you started out as, as just for fun, because it was such a love. So really, to be great in your life, you have to have determination to succeed. And that's so important because we all have these hurdles and failures that we have to overcome. And,
Mm.
when you talked about selling Encyclopedia Britannicas, I thought of a friend who is a Mormon, and he talks about the experience of being a missionary. And he said, if you can be a missionary for 2 years, you can sell anything and you can take rejection because it's going to happen. Anybody who's really successful, again, Brandy Carlisle, I bought her book because the concert was so great and read her story. Wow, did it take determination to get where she is? And she's so talented, but it was a fight. It was a fight. And so, part of it is knowing what to do and caring about others. And part of it is that you just have to suck it up, right?
Stick with it
Suck
and
it up,
slog
buttercup.
through. Absolutely right. You also talk about that breaking the rules gives you an advantage. Shouldn't we be following rules, or why would we want to break them?
Again, we just don't want to be like everyone else. And the simplest breaking the rules example that I give is just no soliciting. Um, you know, when I used to think of no soliciting as a way to thin the herd, right? Because you go in when nobody else is going in. And often it doesn't work, and sometimes it does. So that is a great example of just, thinking differently. My husband coined the phrase, don't just think out of the box, build your own box. One of our clients, our consulting clients, really put his mind to becoming a resource for his clients. Not only his clients and prospects, I should say, not only his clients, but also his prospects. To the point where if he can't fill an order, he will fill it. It's also almost like the Miracle on 34th Street, where the Santa Claus was sending people to Gimbals and Saks if they didn't have it. Well, that was a huge win for Macy's because, wow, they care about me as a customer. So, breaking the rules to that, what someone calls you and they're not even a customer, and you're going to help them out and you're going to tell them where to get it. Um, you know, Again, it's kind of the flow, right? The flow. Instead of saying, I'm going to keep this all for myself, how can I help people? You're going to win as well.
Love that. You mentioned that you went to an Elton John concert. After that, you sent an email, and the subject line was "Sir Elton had to pee." Why that headline, and how did that affect your open rate?
Thanks for bringing that up. That's great. I was yeah, I'd been to the John concert, and I had a podcast interview the next day. So I mentioned it, and this woman that was interviewing me, um, recalled that she had gone to a concert 20 years earlier. And of course it was fabulous, but what stuck in her mind is that mid-song, he's playing, he didn't even wait till in between songs. He stood up, he said, "Sorry, I gotta pee," and walked off the stage. And so that story, I just think, again, the power of story, which I'm really focused on because of AI and how we're all verklempt about this AI. Understandably, where can we stand out. And the fact that 20 years later, for the rest of her life, she will remember, yes, the fabulous concert, but that he said, I have to pee. He's human. It made him real. She said the whole concert was different because of that one little piece of humanity that they got. And so it was interesting enough for me to want to talk about it. And then, of course, as I was thinking, I didn't use AI, but you can imagine, yes, the open rate for that. And of course, I can't do that every time. You can't just do that gratuitously. But it was, a real story, and it had a sincere tie-in. But
Yeah.
yes, my opening rate on that was huge. And I got emails saying, I love this. This is one of my favorite blogs.
It's brilliant, brilliant. And by telling the audience, I gotta pee, especially right in the middle of a song, he's not Elton John superstar. He's now a human, because
Right.
I think we've all been in a situation where it's like, I'm sorry, I gotta pee. And that's the relationship that we have a relationship with Elton when we're sitting in the audience, but it's, you're the superstar, make me happy with your music, which he of course does. But now he's a human and you can relate, and that's who we need to be. I can't tell you how many times I've given salespeople advice. What's that voice you're using? Oh, that's my business voice. Stop that. Stop that. Just be you. I mean, be appropriate, of course, but be you. People want to deal with people, and people have, they have problems and issues and good things and bad things. And I think when we take the time to, and it seems to be a lost art in many cases these days, get to know the people that we're trying to sell to and let them get to know us. That's when we have a chance of forming a relationship and then building on that foundation so that people feel comfortable to make a buying decision, instead of, oh, what if I work with Kay and my sales don't go up, or Jeff and my sales don't go up? Because that's the way people naturally think, the what ifs. And when we become human and make that relationship with them, they feel more comfortable. No?
Exactly. And it connects us. And again, between COVID and how technology is going, the mental health issues right now are off the chart. I think sometimes when we talk to our customers and prospects, that is one of the few times they might be totally listened to. And with somebody who really wants to hear what they're saying, connection is huge. And it's our opportunity as a salesperson, because that, again, that is your opportunity to become uncopyable, because someone else can't go out and just do what you did. You've got a connection, a back and forth, interaction.
Got it. I can't believe we're almost out of time. I've got so much more to ask you, but
This has been so fun. I love it.
I'm having a great time too. What's one thing that the listeners can do today to increase their sales?
I have a great recommendation, and I use this with my clients, and it's just so eye-opening. Go to one of your customers and ask why they buy in their own words. We think we know why they buy. We might be right part of the time. You will find out so much more when you talk to your customer, things that you can use to become better and to also sell other prospects. So it's a simple thing. And I've discovered a 4-letter word that is magic. Help. Will you help me? Help me understand your business. Will you help me, understand why you buy? Will you help me to learn more? People love to help. So that's your 4-letter word. Give it a try, because really there's something magic. And just side note, it even works with your husband.
Okay, I love the idea of asking your customers why they buy from you. And I'm with you 1,000,000%. Quite often, it's not what we think at all. I actually paid a marketing guy to interview some of my customers for me instead of me asking them, so that I didn't want them telling me stuff to make me feel good. And he actually videotaped them giving the answers. And many of those videos are on my website, my customers saying why they like doing business for me and why they buy for me. And sometimes you're right. You're absolutely shocked. It's not what you think. And what I learned was, for sure, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what they think. It was the same thing with my business cards. When I had the same guy design my business cards, and he gave me a lot of different options and said, choose what you like best. And I chose a font and a style that I like best, a color scheme that I like best. And he asked me why. I said, well, the colors are, looks like a sunset. And I love sunsets and sunrises, so that's why I did that. And here's why I like the soft curves on the logo. And he said, great. Now tell me about your customers. And I started describing who they are. And he goes, you think that they care about sunsets? I'm like, I actually don't. And my cards look completely different than what I thought I wanted. But every time I hand them out, I see people look at them because they are very distinctive and brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Okay, we are out of time. I'm going to share my screen. Could you please tell people how to reach you or how to buy the book in case they're interested?
Sure. So you can email me, k@uncopyablesales.com. I'd love to have you buy my book on Amazon, Uncopyable Sales Secrets. If you put Uncopyable in, you'll get also my husband's book, which is on marketing, branding, and innovation, which is excellent too. Follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn. As long as you don't pitch me, I'm happy to connect because you are a listener of Jeff's.
That is great. Thank you so much, Kay. And thank you for spending some time with us today and sharing your brilliance
Thank you,
generously. I could
thanks
talk to you
for
all day
everyone
long.
listening.
It's my pleasure.
Go get 'em.
I'll leave everybody as I do every week. Please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. It's still the beginning of the year. You got a lot of time, but don't dawdle. One thing you absolutely don't want to do is get to November 15th and go, I don't know if I'm going to make my quota. Now is the time to buckle in and make this your best year so far and buy Kay's book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets. It's going to help you do that. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jeff.